It's Toronto's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
I'd like to introduce you to Steve Beatty. Steve is the founder of cultureONE, which in May 2015 merged with Front Row Insurance Brokers and created Canada's largest insurance brokerage specializing in entertainment and media, arts and culture. It has offices in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal and Los Angeles. Steve has over 25 years experience in arts and entertainment and insurance. Everything from the performance arts to TV to movies. As a theatre manager himself for many years and then an insurance entrepreneur, Steve's heart is firmly in the arts, and he is a valued supporter of many cultural initiatives. Steve knows what it takes to bring an artistic vision to completion, as well as make sure the risk factors get covered on the way. So welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Phil. It's nice to be here.
Okay. First thing I want to do is, why don't you just tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, some details on your current business. Just who is Steve Beatty? Why don't you answer that for me?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So I grew up in Toronto, and I still live in Toronto today. I live outside of Toronto actually now, but in Burlington. But I first got into the insurance business about 30 years ago, and I had kind of gotten into it with a bit of resistance, because really what I did want to do is do something more creative in terms of the arts. Played guitar. I love creating woodworking things and doing different things with my hands. And so I was sort of trying to get into that world. But my dad was in the insurance business, and he always would say to me it was a great business, and I would resist that a little bit because I couldn't really see myself being in it. But then as I learned a little more about it, and I was in my early 20s at this point, I started to understand that it had a lot of different elements of things that I liked: finance, law. It was heavily based on relationships, and I sort of went into it. And as I got into it, I was more in the world of commercial insurance. And then over time, I started to migrate my business interests from commercial insurance and then more focused on the arts. And interestingly enough, now I've ended up back working with creative people and really feeling like I've been able to bring two parts of my world together and to build this kind of cool, successful business out of it.
Okay, great. So the next thing I want to say is you moved into insurance, but what was your stop moment, as I term it, when you decided, hey, I want to become an entrepreneur? What caused it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it was probably around the time when I started to do more and more entertainment insurance. For years, I had been involved, as I said, in commercial insurance, doing everything from food processing companies to paper mills. And as my career and my portfolio was growing, I was getting more and more exposure to the arts. And what I realized is that there was an opportunity to really become an insurance broker that wasn't just selling insurance to the arts, but to be an insurance broker that was in the world of arts. And it was at that point I knew, I was giving a different experience to my clients, but I really wanted to build something that had a brand that the people in the arts, our clients, could feel comfortable with and would feel like there was a great fit. And it was then that I started to create my own brand, and I created cultureONE. And then ultimately, as you said in the introduction, I, a few years ago, merged that company in with Front Row, who was doing what I was doing, but they were more focused on film and television production, and I was doing a lot of live entertainment. So we were able to bring them together, and today we're continuing to build on that brand. So it was really that opportunity to feel that I felt like I could do something different than what a lot of our competitors were doing.
It all sounds kind of easy, so you saw a gap, you thought about it. What kind of focus was needed, to build it into a business? You built it into a big enough business that, you merged with Front Row Insurance. So how did you get it to that point when others just don't get there?
Our business model was, like a lot of businesses, in that we built it. I built it, my part of it, and then ultimately, while I was doing that, my partners and my colleagues at Front Row were doing it as well. Very much building it one client at a time, finding that we were springboarding from one opportunity to the next, and that word would get around that we were able to provide a much different service than what a lot of our competitors were, but also then people could find with more generalists. And I think by us doing what we did, it really was, as I say, it was really about having our clients see, and we had to demonstrate to them that when it came to the type of service they needed, or when they got into a claim that was really challenging, we had to show them that we understood these coverages, these really unique insurance coverages. We knew the policies, we knew how to get them through, and that we were going to stay very, very committed all the way through the process, that we just didn't disappear when they needed us the most. And that's the thing with insurance. It's not until you really need it, you might be at a point of crisis, when you're really dependent on your broker. And our reputation really has been built very much on that responsiveness and that sort of long-standing commitment to the clients, no matter what's going on.
So, what does a typical day look like for you? How do you keep the focus needed to succeed and still have fun?
Yeah, the discipline to it, I think really that is, a lot of that gets driven for me by the relationships I have with my clients, with our clients. And for me, I mean, these are relationships that are going back 10, 15, 20 years. And, I feel a strong commitment to these people to be there for them, to help them with their insurance. My days, I tend to start it really early. I tend to be up, usually around 5 in the morning, and I take that time to sort of organize my day a little bit, to be able to get some quiet time to think and problem solve, because our days are pretty hectic. I mean, once things start to happen, like so many people in business, there's sometimes not an opportunity to sit down and think. So I use that early part of my day to do that. And that's really my routine. And then I regroup the next day, and off we go and do it again.
I ask this to people. We do some of our best work outside the office. In other words, there's places we go that help us to think. Is there a place in Toronto, or Greater Toronto, because you're in Burlington now, where you like to recharge, get inspired, or just think about what you're up to? That's
a great thought. I don't know. I mean, I do a lot of that kind of thinking, as say in the early mornings, and often I'm at home at that point. I do take the train into the city in the mornings now, and home at night, and that tends to be a good opportunity to sit and reflect on the day. In Toronto, I mean, I love walking through Toronto. Toronto's such a great city to be able to go and sit. There's a great park down on Front Street, which is interesting because it's where I first started my insurance career 30 years ago, right in that area at Wellington Street and by the Flatiron Building. There's a great fountain, and that's a great park to just kind of go and sit and reflect. I'm also a big fan of airports. I tend to travel a lot, so I find I do some of my best thinking, it seems, in the airport.
It's funny. Maybe we're across the road from each other. I began my career in Toronto at the same park.
Oh, did you really? So you know what you're talking about. It's a great. They've just redone it, and it's really quite something.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, this is the fun thing, is that Front Row, we've ended up recently moving our office within the city, and we've moved, as I say, about a block away from where I started my insurance career, and interestingly enough, where my father started his insurance career in 1946, I think, is when he started his business career in insurance. So I kind of feel like I came full circle back to where it all started.
Do you think entrepreneurs have to be weird or unique in a positive way? Are they wired differently? I mean, what do you think?
I think that, I think entrepreneurs, they possess a certain grit and certain resilience, and they're undaunted. They're not discouraged. They have setbacks. They feel those setbacks, but they don't let them prevent them from getting up and moving forward again. Mm-hmm. And I think when I look at all of people I know that run businesses and that are entrepreneurs, that seems to be the characteristic that always is there, and I wouldn't say a lot of them are blind optimists either. I think a lot of them see the reality. They do see the downsides to things. They're not daunted by those risks. The greater vision and their passion and what they're trying to accomplish is what keeps them motivated, and keeps them moving from, perhaps one business to the next, or just continually growing a business.
What books do you read? Is there any books that you'd like to recommend that you've read recently, made you go, maybe I should look at things differently?
Oh yeah, it's funny, I've always got probably four to six books on the go at any given time. I don't really read much fiction, so I'll tend to read, I like reading biographies and autobiographies about business leaders or just leaders in general. I have an interesting book that I'm reading right now, and I guess because so much of my work is on building relationships. And I mean, people do view, and I think all of us are in an element of sales, right? As entrepreneurs, we're always promoting, we're self-promoting, we're promoting our business, we're always selling. Whether we like to think of ourselves as salespeople or not, we need to build relationships, and we want people to listen to our story. And there's a book called The Science of Selling right now that I'm working my way through. And I was really intrigued by this fella, the author, and he was interviewed on the Wharton School of Business, which is something on the satellite radio that I like to listen to.
Yeah,
it does talk a lot about entrepreneurs and marketing and branding. And his approach to selling, I felt, was really consistent with mine and what mine has been over the years. And what resonated with me on that was the fact that there's no magic to selling. There's no magic to getting somebody to come and use your service or buy your product. Relationship, committing and investing and being available early on through building that early relationship with a client as when they're a prospect, that to me is what the magic of closing is, right? There is no magic. I don't think there's any magic word or formula for getting a new client. I think respecting their needs, addressing those needs, speaking to those needs, and trying to find solutions and giving them options for those problems, giving them solutions which are options is really what makes them come along. And, that's the way I've always viewed what I do. I try to give good information to people so they can make sound, solid decisions. So that book, The Science of Selling, I think is great because it helps people understand the process of how people look at it. And another one, it's funny, I put down for a while, but is The Daily Stoic. I'm quite enjoying that because you got
to read there's a book called the Hillbilly Elegy.
Oh yeah, okay.
And it's written by a guy called J.D. Vance, who's actually an investment guy.
Okay.
But it's generally thought of as a very good perspective on American culture at the moment.
So cool. No,
it's really. Anyway, I think I know this answer. If you weren't doing what you do now, what would you like to do for a profession?
Well, I would probably find myself in the arts, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know.
As I sit there toiling away at playing blues guitar and jazz guitar, I'm like, I'd love to do this. But that ship may have sailed for me, but who knows? Maybe not.
What's your favorite word or few words in business? Things you like to use And maybe the corollary, what's your least favorite?
Well, I will say in the insurance business is I will often remind, and this came from one of my dad's mentors, is that we're in the business to pay claims. When insurance companies look at me a little dumbfounded because we've presented a large claim, I'm like, this was the reason that these people bought this policy. So we are in the business to pay claims, and I think that's something that I have to take very seriously every day when we're looking at things. And I got to admit, we deal with very, very good insurance companies, but sometimes even they forget that, that was the reason for the policy to be purchased. What other things? Oh my goodness, I have so many of them. That
was good. That's okay. So give us the top 3 things on your inspired life list. In other words, the things that really inspire, the top 3 things that inspire Steve,
Oh, gosh.
That's a toughie, I know. But
yeah, I mean, honestly, right now, I'm finding myself super motivated with finding even more innovative ways and products and solutions for clients. I find myself really, really inspired to change some things, the way that insurance policies are written, at least the ones that we have for our clients. Mm-hmm. And I'm really working hard right now to find new ways to deal with clients' issues. I mean, the landscape is changing a little bit. We do get involved in some interesting claims, obviously, and trying to find innovative solutions, not the same old language, not the same old policies. I would say that's one thing from a professional standpoint, really, really unique solutions that other people can't offer.
Yeah. What about a personal standpoint?
Personal?
I mean, they overlap. I mean, what's your inspired life? What gets you up in the morning, makes you go to bed happy? What's that inspired thing that you've got there?
I've always been very all in when it came to my professional life. I spent a lot of hours working and, doing what I do. Right. And I have a great family. And I mean, right now I'm finding more and more that I have, and I know balance, people talk a lot about balance, work-life balance, but I'm finding right now that I'm feeling like I've got a better sense of blending as opposed to balancing. I'm looking at life a little more, my work life, a little more like a music composition. Whereas that, when you look at an orchestral piece, for instance, not every instrument is playing at every given time. Mm-hmm. And what's happening is that one will come in, and even if it's just a little touch, one note, it adds to the complexity and the harmony. And so I'm starting to look at life a little more that way, that there's not a beginning and an end to my work day and my family day, mm-hmm. but that if I respect both sides of those, I can make it work. And I'm feeling like now in my 50s that I'm actually starting to get a sense of how that works. And I love traveling. I love seeing different cultures. I just got back from a wonderful trip in Morocco. Like, I love being out of my comfort zone and being in different places. And I want to do more of that. And that I find really, really inspiring.
Okay. So with travel in mind, here's one of my fun questions I ask everybody. So there's a small tropical island just off Fiji. Mm-hmm. It only has one phone booth. Remember what a phone booth was? Yeah. With no internet. We drop you off there, and you won't have a computer or a smartphone or tablet or anything like that. Mm-hmm. You can use the phone booth located there anytime to call the boat, and we'll come and pick you up. How long would you last before you made that call, and what would you do there while you were there?
Can I have an acoustic guitar?
I wondered about that.
So I can sit and, sometimes mindfully, sometimes mindlessly strumming on a guitar. I can lose hours pretty quickly, so the call may take a while. Wow, that's an amazing question. I love that.
Okay. Well, you just said, give me music and I can stay there forever.
Yeah, I think that the ability... I like people, though. So, I mean, that would be my only thing is I find myself, I loved meeting people and talking to people and learning about them. The funny thing about what people will say with me is I've been having this conversation recently about whether you're an introvert or an extrovert or an ambivert. I think it's the in-between one. I'm not sure if that's the right word or not, but I find that I think I would miss people pretty quickly, more quickly than...
I like that, an in-between avert.
Yes, an in-between avert. There's a very interesting book I'm reading right now I think it's called Quiet, and it's about people who are introverts, but it does talk about these people who are in between.
So, I think just so we're going to close up a little bit now is...
Sure.
Do you have any advice that you've received or, just your own advice that you could pass on to entrepreneurs in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, that you think, someone that may just beginning to go down the road or have hit a wall or whatever, some advice that you could pass on to them that you think would be valuable?
Yeah, something that always I remember, and I remember it all. I've remembered it so many times through my career was there was a wonderful insurance broker in Toronto, and his name was Fred McLean, and Fred was a long-time associate of my dad. They worked in the same insurance company. Right. I worked for an insurance company that Fred was his firm was a large broker for. Mm-hmm. And early on I was a junior underwriter and I was learning the insurance business, but I wanted to be a broker. I really felt like that was something that I wanted to do because it was going to get me in front of people and meeting people. And Fred, I remember sitting in his office. It was on Toronto Street. Which isn't very far from where my office is right now. I'm just one short block over. And Fred looked at me and he said, Steve, he goes, if you always put your client ahead of your own financial needs in this business, you will do well. You will do so well. He goes, all of the commission, all of that will take care of itself. The revenue will come in if you just always put them ahead of yourself. And I remember that all the time. Fred, unfortunately, passed away a number of years ago at a very young age. Mm-hmm. But man, I remember that. And, I remember when I'm sitting and I'm trying to do something and I'm trying to get something for my client, I just always remember that if I take care of them first, the universe has a way of taking care of me.
Okay. So that is absolutely terrific, Steve. Really enjoyed it. It just, people listen to the podcast. How can our listeners get hold of you? And is there anything you'd like to add that I've missed out before we kind of call it a day today?
Well, I mean, obviously email there. If anybody'd like to connect with me, would you like, should I give me?
Yep.
So it's Steve at frontrowinsurance.com. That's my email, and probably my best way to reach out to me. And I'd love to hear from anybody. I'd even love to have these kinds of conversations with people who are managing and running businesses. I think that entrepreneurship and people who are founders of business, it can be a lonely place at times, right? You sometimes need to have groups of people that you can talk to, people who are struggling, figuring it out, hearing other people's successes. So I'd love to carry on a dialogue with anyone who's building a business.
Steve, thank you very much. I think
Thanks for having me on.
Maybe understand a little bit more of the entrepreneurship in the insurance business, and welcome to Canada's podcast. And
thank you. It's been great being here. I've really enjoyed it.
Really enjoyed your company.